Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We're very excited to have Ria host this webinar for us to basically help us all cope with anxious feelings in uncertain times. I think it's safe to say that over the last kind of 5 to 6 weeks, we've all had moments where it's been very overwhelming. So we're extremely grateful for her support and kind of sharing her expertise and trying to help us deal with this current situation. So without further ado, I will pass on to you. Please feel free to write any comments in the chat box and I will basically read them out as they come in order to make this session as interactive as possible. Thanks. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Milena. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be with you today. Thank you for giving me an hour of your time. So I'm Bria. I'm a counselling psychologist and a mindfulness and ACT trainer in Dubai, from Australia, in case you can't catch the accent there. And today what I want to do with you, and like Milena just said, I'd really encourage your questions throughout this hour. Anything that comes to mind, and she's going to read them out to me so that this is truly interactive rather than just a video you could have watched, okay? So we're going to be talking about good ways to cope with some of the more difficult to feel feelings, anxious feelings. And of course, we are experiencing quite uncertain times. I will say that that's always the case for us as human beings. Things are actually always uncertain, but it's just that when you've got a crisis, such as we have at the moment, our ability to predict even small things becomes less. And so that starts to create more trouble for us. But there are definitely great ways that you can respond to that to help us to cope and get through this time. And hopefully we're starting to see a little bit of hope here with the measures that have been taken having been very effective, etc., etc. The other part of what I'm going to hopefully help you with today is not just about coping. It's about, you know, when we are having a time such as this where it is challenging and we are having to deal with a lot of more difficult to feel feelings, there's also a really great opportunity to get far better with those feelings in general. And that will serve you not just during this COVID-19 experience, but beyond into your life, especially when it comes to work-life balance, chronic stress, things like that, which are already, you know, permeating our modern work culture. And we can get a lot better at those things, but literally have bigger muscles for them going forward. So I want to keep that in mind today. So we're going to do some information and some practices. So we're going to do a meditation practice today, and I'll be explaining why meditation is such a great thing for us and in the context of what we're going to be looking at. And as I said, I really encourage your input and questions and insights as we go along. Great. Okay, so I wanted to take a look at the way that the Chinese write the word crisis to start, because this will just help frame the discussion today. So the first character, of course, meaning danger. And yeah, of course, we're pretty up to date on that by this stage. You know, we know what we have to do to stay safe from the actual virus, etc., etc. Then there's also the dangerous elements of feelings that can get very overwhelming, of behavioral ruts we can get stuck in that can actually be a little dangerous for us, or of you know, the things that our minds might be doing about our experience. And that can all feel a little dangerous too. So we're definitely going to be focusing on the coping with that. But then there's the other character here, and that's the character for opportunity. And that touches on what I just said about getting those bigger muscles. So it's not that I want to minimize the danger or the seriousness of what's going on at the moment, but neither do I want to just dwell there. I'd like us to take a balanced view and realize that, you know, crisis always precedes growth. So there will be growth out of this. We just don't know what that's going to look like yet for each individual person. But I will encourage you to take that frame today as we explore these ideas and these techniques. Okay. So first of all, I'd like to do a little bit of normalization, naturalization, just for you and what you might have been experiencing within yourselves. So basically, of course, we're all different. And that means that I'm not in any way saying that there's one thing that's going to be happening at the moment in our nervous systems. But we are all human and we are all built with a central nervous system. And so it's highly likely that in your own way, you're experiencing some level of flight or fight activation at the moment. Whenever a context is not 100% safe, the nervous system kicks into what they call sympathetic nervous system response, a little bit fight or flight. That's wonderful because it's designed to keep you vigilant, to keep you alert, awake, and ready to act, okay? Ready to fight or flight. Now, sometimes, as we know from the research on chronic stress, there can be no external threat, but we can be creating an external threat in the mind. That deadline, what that person might think, etc., can, if rehearsed enough, start to stimulate the nervous system into this fight or flight for no good reason. And we call that chronic stress. So here, what we're referring to is the actual context. And so that means that all of us, regardless of our mental habits and learning histories with stress, are likely to be, at least sometime in the day, a bit activated, right? So what does that mean physiologically? You might be noticing a little bit of over-breathing at times, digestive disruption, maybe dizziness, lightheadedness. Some people might be getting numbness in fingers and toes at different times, feeling a little panicky, okay? Behaviorally, if we're leaning more towards a fight response in any given moment, it might mean we're a bit short-tempered, a bit impatient, and we might even get hyper-focused or overwork. That's something I'm seeing a lot of at the moment. People don't know the healthy limit on their work. And of course, we're working from home, a lot of us, and so work can really stretch out. And that can be a little bit of a fight response. It's like a moving towards. Flight response can look like this tendency to want to zone out. So to want to consume too much sugar, to want to watch too much Netflix, to want to procrastinate. And behaviorally, that can be showing up a little bit reflective of the flight response. The reason I'm pointing this out is because I want to naturalize it and for us to be really kind about it. You can't talk to your nervous system with your intellect and tell it to calm down. The nervous system in this case is responding to an actual pandemic. And so there's going to be a little bit of this around. And for some people, depending on their learning histories, it'll be more pronounced. But it's going to be around until the context changes again, okay? So I gave freeze its own slide because, as we know, it's not just fight or flight, it's fight, flight, or freeze. That's the sympathetic nervous system response. And so freeze can be where you just feel a little paralyzed. I've been noticing it in silly ways, like I'll want to go and have a cup of tea, make a cup of tea, and I'll feel stuck. Somehow it doesn't make any sense intellectually. This is the nervous system at the moment experiencing a little bit of this paralysis state. I will say, if you're experiencing a lot of that, then please reach out for some individual support. There's heaps of people offering individual support in my profession at the moment. So, please don't suffer in silence on that one. But a little bit of freeze, some fight, flight, totally normal. And we don't speak to it with our intellect. We have to intervene in it physically. So a bit later, we're going to go through a couple of techniques, and in the resources pack that I've prepared for you, you'll also get some little videos on how to interrupt that nervous system response, and just think about interrupting it many times a day at the moment to stay a little more balanced. Okay, so that's what our hardware might be doing at the moment. Let's look at our software. So our minds and our emotions. So what are our minds likely to be up to at the moment? And again, everyone's different, but we're going to see some general trends that you might resonate with. Okay, so basically, when we are under pressure, when there is stress around, minds do these type of things. They tend to run what we call cognitive distortions. So for instance, you might be experiencing more what if thoughts at the moment. What if, what if, what if, what if? You might be experiencing a kind of fortune-telling habit at the moment. This is the sort of thinking that's arising almost automatically, okay? So fortune-telling is stories about how things are going to go in the future. There might be a bit more black and white thinking happening for you at the moment, and that's just your mind's desire to take an uncertain situation and make things certain. So you might get into things being all this or all that, okay? There's likely to be an over-focus on the negatives and a screening out of neutral or even positive aspects of reality, and that is very reflective of our nervous system. Essentially, we're built to do that. We're built to over-focus on negatives and under-focus on positives, because that's how we've survived as a species. So we're not descended from the really optimistic cavemen. We're descended from the ones who could assess threat the best. So they think there's about a 5-to-1 ratio there. For every one positive you'll notice 5 negatives. Okay, so superstitious thinking also might be a habit that you're finding yourself caught in at the moment. So it's not that you're a negative person if you're noticing these, okay? We're in a stage of going through an uncertain, stressful time. And so when minds are under pressure and under stress, this is the type of things that minds do. Now, the problem with them is that we pay a lot of attention to the content of that mind, and what it starts to do is drain us of our energy. You know, if you go around all day, what if, some of you might be very familiar with that, especially if you're a little bit more prone to being a little bit more anxious, you're going to be drained after a very short time of doing that. So same with fortune telling, same with over-focusing on the negatives. It sort of robs you of being able to get your ballast. So there is a way that we can deal with this, and we're going to come to that very soon. So if you're noticing any of this, please don't think there's something wrong with you, because pretty much all of us, to some extent in our own ways, are noticing this at the moment. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you about, and I wanted to call it getting stuck rather than struggling or suffering, or use disorder language, around anxiety or depression or things we often hear psychologists use. I always wanted to talk about getting stuck, because at the moment in this time, many people are getting a little bit more stuck than they usually get. And so they're noticing certain things about their experience. And if they don't understand that well and how to work with it, it can just lead to getting more stuck. So I guess what I'm trying to do with this session is help you get out of your own way and help you work with these natural processes that we know from behavioral science exist, and so that you don't make this time harder than it needs to be. Okay, so what does getting stuck look like? So from behavioral science, we know that there are 6 processes involved in that. So rather than talk generally, I'm now going to break down those 6 things and present them to you as the 6 ways we get stuck, to see if you can recognize any of your own experience in that. Then I'm going to circle back around and I'm going to go through each of those 6 things and talk to you about how we work with those one by one. So that, and you'll have access to these slides to go back and look at them again, and supporting materials. So you don't need to remember it, but the main thing is just reflect, how does that apply to my life as we go through it, to make it really relevant. Okay, so feel free to shoot me questions at any time. I know I'm motoring through this information because I want to have time for a nice lengthy practice with you today. So the 6 aspects of a human being getting stuck, what we know. Number 1, when we're stuck, we tend to fuse with the contents of our thinking mind. In other words, we lose contact with just being here, and we're in our heads. So the mind that is running distortions, like what if, or negative rumination, if we are paying a lot of attention to that, then what tends to happen is it colors everything. So we lose our ability to just be in the world directly and experience things directly. And we start to experience the world through this sort of filter of thinking. Now, I know this sounds a bit strange, especially if you haven't come across this content before, but it will become clearer as we move into the other processes, how important this one is. So basically we call this fusion. It's being in the mind, right? And we all know that our mind can be a great place to be or a horrible place to be, depending on what it's currently doing. So we need to be able to withdraw attention from it at will. So we'll look at that in a little bit. Number 2, when we get stuck, we tend to be dwelling in the future or the past mentally. So if we're feeling more anxious and we're feeding those anxious feelings, we tend to be what-ifing about the future. And if we are getting low and getting into regret or self-criticism, we tend to be dwelling in the past, right? So we lose contact with the only place we're truly alive, which is here and now. Hence mindfulness, right? Hence mindfulness exploding. So this is a mindfulness-based therapy. So mindfulness addresses each of these 6. We're going to look at how. So basically, that tendency to be hijacked in the future and past is something that's very trained in us. And we're always being told right from being small children to think about the future and to learn from the past. So I'm not talking about not planning your future, strategizing, doing all those things we have to do, nor am I talking about not reflecting. I'm talking about anchoring yourself in the present when you do those activities. And there are ways that we can do that. Okay, thirdly, when we get stuck, we are getting into a fight with our internal world, our feelings. So we are effectively trying to feel some things and not feel others, especially fear. Fear is one we don't really like to feel much. So we get avoidant, okay? Now the problem with that is that we don't actually have direct control over feelings. We can definitely feed negative feelings. If you're starting to feel a little bit down and you start telling yourself a lot of negative things, you're going to feed that. If you feel a little bit afraid and you start telling yourself more scary things, you're going to feed that. But essentially, feelings are like weather. They've always been coming and going. And we all know that sometimes it's possible just to wake up with a feeling. It's not always something we're thinking that's creating a feeling. It's a bunch of things. It's our biology. It's all sorts of things. It's, yes, the contents of the mind, but also the context that we're currently living through and what we might be picking up on. So essentially, if you fight your feelings, you feed them. So when we get into this desire to push away, feelings we don't want, they tend to persist stronger. So they say what we resist persists. So we really want to help ourselves to get out of that cycle, and you might relate to that cycle in your own life and how that works for you. So we're going to come back to this one and talk about that. Okay. When we get stuck, this is a little bit what I touched on with the central nervous system activation. We tend to get reactive, passive, kind of checked out, or paralyzed. Okay, that's behaviorally. So what we tend to do is we start to get into behaviors that then set up feedback loops that feed the feelings and the thoughts we're having. And so we're, a classic one is, I feel a bit, say, passive, feel a bit low motivation. I'm really noticing at the moment, at least in Dubai, in this stage of the pandemic experience, it's not so much fear that I'm seeing in people. I work with lots of people every day. It's more low mood that's starting to emerge, like exhaustion, fatigue, negativity, lack of motivation. And that is so understandable. So when that passivity shows up, then we tend to get, passive about certain behaviors that help us, like exercise. And then that, when we don't exercise enough, it sends a feedback loop where our emotional self gets heavier, and then we might reach for too much calorie-rich food or sugar, which again is going on a lot at the moment. And if that's happening for you, please don't worry about it. I won't go into why it's happening at the moment, but there's a whole reason evolutionarily why that's happening. And then that sets up more feedback loop, and then there's negative feelings and thoughts about the self, and down the mood goes. So it's important to be doing things that set up better feedback loops for ourselves, but we have to work with thoughts and feelings within inside ourselves first in order to be able to do that. So we're going to come back and have a look at how we can get our behavior a bit more under our control. Okay, number 5 is when we get stuck, we tend to be overly adherent to automatic, unconscious rules. So hearing a lot of this at the moment. A classic one I'm hearing when working with corporate people is, I should be more productive than I am. I should be more disciplined. I shouldn't procrastinate, etc., etc. Or I should be exercising more. I should be using this time to better myself and enhance myself, and all of these sort of rules around how quarantine is time, right? So you should learn that extra language, but it doesn't take into account how the human being is built. I'm not saying we can't do some of that stuff, and some people are going to have more motivation than others for it, but in general, this is a time of getting through. It's not, you need to be in a quite relaxed place to learn lots of things. And so the idea that you can enroll in an online course at the moment and really absorb it just might not be possible for a lot of people. So having rules about how we should be really sensitizes us to the discrepancy or the gap between how we should be according to the rule and how we are doing. And that can be quite painful, and it can then act to make us more stuck. So we have to do something about the rules, which I'll come back to in a minute. Okay, and lastly, when people are getting stuck, they have this very narrow story of themselves going on. It's problem rich. It's all about the thing that's happening. So what happens is they lose their sense of perspective about the bigger picture. And that, what I'm noticing with this pandemic experience is people, everything, and it's so easy for this to happen because every time we touch our media at the moment, it's all about it. It's everywhere, and I'm not saying we don't have to be informed, but we need to put limits on that because we're already perhaps engaged in a process where our thinking about ourselves is becoming a little too narrow, and we're losing that sort of balcony view. And when we're engaging in too much media and everywhere we turn, it's about what's going on, that can feed that. And it leaves pretty much no room for creativity or for the kind of feelings of strength and agency that come from perspective. So we need to get back into our perspective-taking selves. So now we're going to look at how to work with these. So I hope, that you're able to find some of those relevant to your experience, or maybe see how you might be experiencing different things, and just know that comes out of your humanness, not out of any problem per se. Okay, so how might we be able to help ourselves get a little more free? Okay, so we're not going to get as free as her. I sort of went far with the photo there, although we are allowed outside now. So let's go through them one by one and look at the practices that we want to get into to help really enhance these 6 processes now. Of those first 6 processes, we could look at them as the processes of being stuck. And these 6 now we're looking at, these are the flip side of each one. And we're looking at these as processes of getting more free, okay? And we can enhance them through what we do. Number 1 process, realizing that you are not your mind. You have a mind. It's actually a construction that you acquired. It's not something you were born with. So this is tricky. So, we were born with awareness, and we were born with feeling and consciousness, but we were not born with this thing we call mind. Other words for mind, psyche, ego, right? And that mind, or the small m mind, the thinking mind, is constructed out of language system that you acquired, or in most cases that I encounter with people, language systems, the educational system that you went through, your cultural system, your family culture, and all of the experiences that have ever happened to you up until this day. And what that's done is that's constructed this thing called mind. So it's formed the habits, the patterns, the ways of thinking about the world that you have. And a lot of that's brilliant, right? But some of that's very unhelpful. And so therefore the main distinction we have to make is to get a little space between us and the thinking mind. In other words, you are not it, you have one, you have a mind, okay? And it's a problem-solving tool. That's the mind's job, to solve problems. So you've heard that phrase, if all you've got to hammer, everything you're going to see is going to be a nail. The mind acts a bit like that. It will quickly turn things into problems because it's a problem-solving tool. It's also a meaning-making tool. It's constantly making meaning from experience, evaluating, judging, creating stories. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we need to be able to see that that's happening. So there are ways we do that. To increase this distance between you, the awareness of mind, and the mind itself, yes, meditate, and you're going to see meditate come up on most of these, which is why we're going to do a little meditation today. But a really quick thing that you can do is just put the phrase, I'm having the thought that, in front of the thought. So, for example, if I was having the thought, what if they don't get anything from this talk today, right? A little bit of an activating what if, a little bit anxiety producing what if thought. I would say, I'm having the thought, what if they don't get anything? So what it does is it subtly but powerfully steps you back a little bit into the awareness itself, right? Because if I know what my mind is doing, if I can say, yeah, I actually have been having quite a few more catastrophizing, what-ifing thoughts of late, how do I know? Because I'm not the mind recognizing itself. I'm in here and I notice thinking happens. So we want to have that space. It's called diffusion. And meditation is one of the fastest ways to get that to happen, which is why I want to do that with you today. But I'm having the thought that, try it. It's a really good little technique for getting that on-the-spot diffusion. Okay, second process that we really want to strengthen is to be where we are, okay? So be here now. Well, we don't have any choice. We never have. We're always here now. That's the only place you ever exist. But to be consciously where you are, the only place your life can be lived, the only place you can actually act, is really important. And we live in a society that encourages us to be elsewhere, future or past, that we can be missing our nows. And so we say right now is our best friend. Yes, in general, that's the essence of mindfulness and why it's become so popular. Because we need it as an antidote to the modern kind of fast-paced, over-intellectualized way that we've been living. But when we're going through a crisis, especially right now, is our best friend, because that's the place you cope. So at the moment, the minute we start what-ifing, there's so much uncertainty around that it can get you, at the very least, a bit drained. But it can actually invite bunches of fear depending on what you're susceptible to. So we want to keep our attention in the here and now, doing what serves us as best we can. So we need to strengthen that ability. So we're going to look at that in a minute. Getting more in the present moment, meditation, again, one of the best ways to do that, and a little body scan practice. So this is a little 30-second body scan practice I want to take you through now, if you feel to, that you can be doing all the time during your day, just to interrupt this tendency to be in the future and the past. So we can do it with our eyes open, it's no problem. Just put your attention, or just get a sense of your feet touching the floor now. Just feeling, you're not looking to feel anything particular, just notice the feeling of your feet on the floor. And then notice the feeling of the breath happening in your chest. And notice where your body's making contact with the chair. Notice the sounds you can hear. And then just with your attention, take your attention from the top of your head, and you might want to close your eyes for this one, and just scan through the inside of your body all the way down, just noticing how you're feeling, all the way down to those feet, and then all the way back up to the top of your head, and then open your eyes again. Okay, so your body only exists in the present moment. So if you come and pay attention to your body even for 30 seconds, like that, you're back in the present moment. It will regather your energy. Okay, you're not looking to fix anything while you do that. You're just looking to inhabit the present moment. So, you know, doing a little body scan like that as many times as you need to during the day is a really healthy habit, not just for now, but for life. Okay. All right. Number 3. In order to get unstuck, we have to be able to accept what it is we feel. That doesn't mean that we approve of it. It doesn't mean we're a victim to it. It doesn't mean we want more of it. It doesn't mean that we're resigned to do nothing to help ourselves out. I'm just depressed, that's just it, I have to accept it, that's all. That's not what we mean, acceptance. Acceptance is the stance you get into in order to do the next wisest thing, okay? So sometimes there's something you can do that's helpful, but a lot of the feelings we have, they just come and go. You know, there's not actually a solve for them, right? So that's why we say feelings are like weather. You know, and there's never been a feeling since the dawn of time that hasn't come and gone, right? But we tend to get into treating our feelings like they're problems to be solved. And remember what that mind is a problem solver. So it'll get really focused on, why am I sad? Why am I angry? Why am I anxious? And it'll spin, right? With the why question. But actually, feelings, from a behavioral science perspective, feelings are not problems to be solved, they're experiences. And so when we start to relate to our feelings just as experiences, there are going to be some we like and some we don't like, but they're all temporary. And we can get out of their way and let them do their thing without getting into a you fight it, you feed it mode. Okay, so to do this, we basically have to be willing to have the experience we're having at any one time. And then work effectively like that. There will be a to do, right? Sometimes in the outside world, sometimes just inside. Sometimes it'll just be relax and accept. There will be something to do, but we line ourselves up so that we're able to do what's wisest. And we'll look at the next processes coming, which talk about that. So basically, to be able to get more willing and accepting, meditate, which we'll look at in a minute, but you can use this little phrase, just like when you use the phrase, I'm having the thought that. This one's helpful for feelings. Instead of I'm angry, you might say to yourself, anger is here. Instead of I'm afraid, fear is here, right? Now, it sounds very tiny, but what it does is it just steps you back into the awareness of that feeling, the part of you that's more permanent, you know, so that you can let the weather do its thing, okay? So we obviously do have to call on our courage for this, especially at the moment when we're being stimulated perhaps into some fear-based, some fearful feelings, you know, which are entirely natural. Try using that is here method rather than talking to yourself about being fear or being stress, right? And when we come back to look at meditate, we'll explore just how you can do this on the spot and how you can build this through your meditation practice. Okay, so number 4, we need to, in order to be really free and living flexibly and free, we need to be engaged in loads of wise, committed action, right? So basically that means doing what lives well given the current realistic contextual features, okay? So it's very much okay to be making that up as you go along. It's a creative process. And essentially it goes with this next process, which is wise committed action comes out of knowing what's most important to you. So this is where you see a difference to that rules-based, kind of automatic rules-based, and being in touch with the gap between how you should be and how you are. This is very different. This is about having clarity about what's most important to you in your life. And it's like having that compass that you've thought about, that you've noticed, that you've worked on, so that when you're in a situation of having to make a wise move and you're working with the world within to be able to do that, that move that you make is lined up behind how you want to be, what you feel is most valuable to you. And so, this means that, 6 months from now, how do you want to look back on this time and say, that's how I handled that? Not in some kind of rules-based, I felt like this and I did that and I achieved that, but how you were with your loved ones, how you were with yourself, how you coped, where you still lived your life. Yeah. So that means lining up behind our values. So we want to spend some time, all the time, not just now, our whole lives, clarifying those values. And to help you to do that, there's 3 ways. You can just ask yourself, what do I care about most? And write down. And some of those values are going to be very top of mind. It's going to be really obvious to you. But then you can ask yourself the question, what's triggering me most? Like, where do I get my most triggered, angry, short-tempered, triggered? And then flip that over and ask yourself, what's happening there that's so important to me that when it gets threatened, I get so reactive? And you'll sort of dig for some values that you didn't know were driving you, but our values are always driving us, whether we know about them or not. It's just when you make them conscious, you give yourself this compass, you give yourself this kind of clarity. It's very security inducing, okay? The other one is you can ask yourself, who do I admire? Just in general, or about how they're handling this particular situation, perhaps. And then you can say, why? What is it about that person and how they're handling themselves and the way they behave that I really value? What am I valuing there? And then, I'd really encourage you at the moment to do a bit of journaling about this and get yourself a list, and then try and whittle that list down to 5 core values that you have at this stage in your life. And it'll really help you when you're feeling under emotional pressure to decide what's a step you can take, what's a move, not to get rid of the feeling you've got, but to move with it, okay? So in order to, number 6 actually, so we're looking at that with values. So number 6 is about keeping perspective and not getting in this narrow place around the story of me and life has become really unworkable and a bit too limited and non-creative. So this ability to keep perspective, to realize that everything has a start and a finish. Everything. Change is the only real constant of life. And so we can keep a perspective even when we're going through things that are very stimulating because they're full of uncertainty. We can also remember that life is always full of uncertainty. Never in our life have we truly been able to predict what will happen 5 minutes into the future, but it's just that life is more predictable at some times, but it's never certain. And so we've been dealing with that fundamental uncertainty our whole lives. It's just now our minds are very focused in problem-solving fashion on a big fat problem, because there is a big fat problem in the world, which will pass eventually. We just have to be as wise as we can in dealing with it while it passes, essentially. So to keep perspective, we need to be able to target our need for control. And this is the central problem of being human, is we want control, and really not anything is controllable. When you think about it, because we live with this fundamental uncertainty of just that's the human experience, seeking control all the time is incredibly frustrating because very little, if anything, can be controlled. So we can gain agency over our responses to what happens if we work on our muscle of attention, which we're going to look at in a minute. But beyond that, we can't really control. We can't control what other people do. We can't control what the weather does. We can't control our careers. We can do wise things to impact them, for sure. But control is a problematic endeavor. And it's gotten a little bit out of control as a problem. I think back in the day, people used to accept it more, that we don't have control. But as we've gotten, it's like we've gotten too smart for our own good in some ways. As we've gotten more and more clever, there's this illusion that we can control our lives. But as we've seen in mental health statistics, they've also been tracking with that. So anxiety is way higher than it was a generation ago. Depression is way higher than it was a generation ago, because we've been feeding those stuck processes as we seek this control. So this will be different for each individual, but I wanted to bring attention to it today. So you might have seen this little infographic, and I encourage you to make your own. I actually wouldn't put so many things in the middle there. I'd just put my responses, or my attention, actually, it'd be what I'd put in there. I can control my attention. Things I can't control, all the other stuff, and practice relaxing when my mind tells me to try and control that other stuff. Okay, so I want to do a little bit of meditation with you to round out our session today. And the reason why meditation, okay, so a lot of you, I'm sure, in this group today have already meditated. I'd love to hear about that if you want to say something about that. Meditation as a practice, so I'm a psychologist and I work with a load of different techniques to help people over the years. I've never ever come across anything that works as consistently as meditation. It has a 5,000-year evidence base. It exists in every human culture. It is embedded in every religious and philosophical practice in the world. It's a truly human technology of genius. And what it does is it basically gets you into right relationship with thought. It centers you in the present moment. It gets you into feeling what you're feeling adaptively without creating a fight. And it connects you to the perspective taking part of yourself. Milena, I just noticed a comment or a question coming.
Yeah, a gentleman that says that he does meditation every day.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And could he tell us, you know, just briefly in the chat, what he believes the main benefit of that is for him? Just give him a second to write that.
Yeah, sure. He's just going to write it.
Fantastic.
While we wait for him to write, how often would you recommend people meditate? I know some people do it daily, people do it.
We'll get into that in a little bit. I think that having a bunch of rules around meditation is not so helpful. And I'll get into a little bit. Okay, I just wanted to give him a chance to tell us this. What's he have to say?
So he said, I meditate on weekends. It helps me slow down and appreciate life.
Yeah, beautiful. It does. Meditation is a slowing down. It's a being here now. Yeah, something else has come in there?
Meditation is a cure to the body and our journey. Our life lets you relax.
Yeah, definitely. And meditation puts you in touch with, I feel, like who you really are. And it gets you into these right relationships with the world within. Because we're trained to solve everything. And you can solve on the outside of you just fine. But if you start trying to solve the insides, you need a much better stance than that. Otherwise, we create these issues. Yeah, just one more comment and then I'll move into our practice. What's there?
There's a question. What can you say about cognitive behavioral therapy versus meditation? The CBT looks more straightforward in terms of how we deal with our feelings.
Okay, so essentially cognitive behavioral therapy is a way of relating rationally and logically in your cognitive states, like with thinking rationally and logically, and it's about behaving according to that, right? So the research is very clear. It's very good to be a good thinker. That's absolutely, you know, I'm a trained CBT therapist. It's very good to be a good to be a good thinker, to think rationally, to not think in ways that are unhelpful, etc., etc. But the research is very clear. CBT techniques will hold to a certain stress level, and then they do not hold. So there is only a certain amount of stress you can take before you start thinking in a distorted fashion. So that'll be different for each person. Meditation takes you the rest of the way because it's about the relationship with thought itself. So for instance, if I notice I'm having the thought, oh wow, I'm really, really terrible at public speaking and I really should give it up, which I might be, whatever. And I notice that's an activating thought. It wastes a lot of my energy. It may or may not be true. So CBT therapists would have me look at that and they'd say, okay, what's the evidence for it? What's the evidence against it? So I would get into thinking rationally and fairly, almost like a third party. And then I would generate what's known as cool thought. So that's like a hot thought. I would generate a cool thought. So when I caught myself thinking that, I would sort of use this cool thought. I would say, no, even though I'm not the best public speaker in the world, I care about it, whatever. So that's fine. But if my emotional stress goes high, we've all experienced this, I'm sure. No matter how much rational thought or ability to rationalize you've got, it won't touch it. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, you can't talk yourself down out of that because it's the emotional system and the physical body joins in on it. Whereas when you have a meditation practice or work with meditation or mindfulness-based therapies, you step out of paying attention to what the mind is doing completely. So it's almost like blah, 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 talk to the hand. I'm not going to argue with you because we all know what it's like to be in a place, I'm sure, where one part of your mind is arguing with another part of your mind, right? It's exhausting. And so the research is very, very clear on this. There's just loads of research because the type of psychology that I do is what we call the evidence-based end. So we're all about doing loads of research to understand mediators of growth and change. And CBT holds to there and doesn't hold above it. So that's the current state of the nation. Let's see what a couple of people had to say, and then we'll jump into meditation. Elena?
We've got a comment here. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are considered as an integral part of our life nowadays.
Hope so. And I really think that's a really positive shift for the world. Yeah, something else?
And then do any of you guys meditate with Jay Shetty? He does live meditation. It's pretty cool.
He's so lovely, Jay Shetty. His videos and his things that he does, he's just wonderful. Yeah, I love him.
Very good. And it says, do you prefer that we do meditation with a doctor, I mean a psychologist, or in a yoga way?
Oh, look, it doesn't matter. Like, it just depends on the teacher. That I would say you look for teachers who are experienced. That would be all I would say. There's a lot of misunderstandings. So this is a good link into the next thing I was going to talk to you about. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what meditation actually is, and I've encountered teachers teaching it in a way that deepens that misunderstanding. So I think that's kind of a common trap for people who are new to meditation, or let's face it, mindfulness has become quite popular, and so there are little quick online courses teachers can go do and learn, and I wouldn't go with that. But if someone has a practice and they've been doing it a long time, and you'll know if they're the real deal with it. It doesn't really matter if they're a doctor or not a doctor. It just means they're a meditator, so they know how to teach meditation. Right? Sorry, there was another question there, Milena?
That was the last question.
Oh, okay. I just saw another flash there. Okay, so I want to say, and a lot of you will know this already, but I want to clear it up for those who might not. Meditation is not about clearing the mind. It is not about stopping thought. It is not about calming and being zen. It is not about having a blissful zen out experience. If you try to achieve that in your mindfulness meditation practice, you will get frustrated. This is what actually blocks people from developing a practice, because they sit down and they want their mind to calm. If you start to try to push thoughts away, immediately thoughts will increase. immediately you will increase noise inside your head. So what we're actually practicing is strengthening the muscle of attention. So the muscle of attention, our attention is different to our thought. So for instance, I could take this and I could just look at it. If everyone can see it, I could just look at it and I could take it in with my senses, its shape, where the light's hitting it, and I could just sort of experience it directly. Or I could look at it and go, it's a donga for a gong, and it's old, or it's new, or I don't like it, or I do like it, or it reminds me of a stick, or, you know, I could have thoughts about it. And those two experiences are very different. So we're constantly going through the world mixing those two experiences up. There is attention and then there is content, right? When we meditate, we tease those apart again. So we give ourselves an anchor for our attention, and that is always something real, not conceptual. So in today's case, and as is very popular, we're going to use the breath, because the breath is only happening now, it's real, and you can put your attention on it and return your attention to it when your attention wanders off into the content, okay? And then what we do is we open up to letting the experience feel however it feels. So we let go of attachment to it feeling good. Doesn't have to feel good, doesn't have to feel bad either. It's just going to feel what it feels like. Now, any meditator will tell you that occasionally wonderful feelings show up, okay? Because that's our true nature coming up. If you get all the stuff out of its way, it happens. But if you strive for that, it won't happen. So try and think of it as a happy side effect of meditation. The actual aim of meditation is to isolate that muscle of attention and to work it out like you're in the gym, right? To strengthen it so that we can hold our attention at will where we choose it to go from the wisest part of us. Okay, so William James, modern father of psychology back in late 1800s, can't remember the date, he said, where your attention goes, that's your life. So we know this. Two people in the same situation will pay attention in radically different ways to different aspects of that reality, and will have completely different feelings, thoughts, and experiences. And so how does it serve you to pay your attention? And we've been trained to just give all of our attention to our mental content, right? But we didn't even put that mental content in there, most of it. We can think on purpose, but we know a huge percentage of thoughts just arise automatically, and they're habituated, okay? So when we meditate, we develop this ability to withdraw attention from cognition and to hold it in the present moment. And when we do that every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, think quality, not quantity. If you can do 30 minutes, fantastic, but you've got to build up to it because it's literally a muscle. When you do that every day, you develop that ability off your cushion. So if I'm sitting here talking to you, what serves this context best, wisest committed action is for me to be 100% present and focused on what I'm talking about and do my best to connect to you even though I can't see you. Okay, that's my wise committed action. Now, if my mind is saying, what am I going to have for dinner? What about that thing you've got to do? You didn't send that email. Oh, oh, this is terrible. They're not getting this. Oh, if my mind's doing all that, which it might do, but if I'm paying attention to that, I'm not going to be here, right? So because I have a strong muscle of attention, I just withdraw it. I can notice those thoughts, but I don't give them any attention. I hope this is making sense. And I know a lot of you already know this, but I just wanted to go there for anybody who doesn't, or who maybe thought that meditation is something about calming yourself, because it's not. Our actual natural state is calm. That's our natural state. That's why people who meditate look like they have a personality type. They look like they have this calm personality type, but they don't. They're all different. It's just as humans, we are calm at our center. You see that in little children when they're just really present and they're not upset about anything. They're just so present and calm, and that's in us. Okay, So let's do our meditation because we're running out of time a little bit, but I want to have time for some Q&A as well. So we're just going to do a short meditation today. So I'll invite you to come to a comfortable seated position with an upright spine. You don't want to meditate lying down because it's too easy to go to sleep, okay? So comfortable upright spine in a chair is absolutely fine. Hands resting in the lap or on the legs. And I'll invite you to close your eyes if you feel to. If you don't want to close your eyes, that's fine. It means it's a little harder to meditate with your eyes open, but it can be done. But just drop your gaze to like a 45-degree angle and really soften your eyes and just let your gaze stay in one place. Don't dart your eyes around. Okay, so eyes open or closed. Closed is a little bit easier. And we're going to start off by just tuning in to the sounds you can hear in the room you're sitting in. And just see if you can come to your sense of hearing directly. So let those sounds come and go from your ears, not as the names of the things making the sounds, but as pitch, tone, and volume. Just see if you can just stay present with sound for a few moments. So just know that the sounds in your room, they're helpful. They keep you anchored in the present too, no matter what they are. So now we're going to find the breath in the body. So some people are going to feel their breath at the nostrils a little most easily. Other people are going to feel the breath in the chest as the chest rises and falls. And other people, they're going to feel it more in the belly and the lower back. So don't try and deepen your breath. Don't try and slow it down. Just let your body breathe naturally. But just scan through your body and see where you most easily feel that breath. And then just let all of your attention anchor there. It's like you get really fascinated in that breath at that part of the body. Those sensations because they're only happening in the present moment. And then whatever you feel, you feel. It's not a problem. It's an experience. So if you feel bored, just sit here for a few minutes and feel bored. Don't need to make a story about that. You can just experience boredom. Boredom is here. If you feel agitated or sleepy or any feeling, it can be just met and given a lot of room. So not treated as a problem. But just keep your attention on the breath. Likewise with body sensations. Body is constantly producing sensation, and there's room for that here too, without judgment. So there's no need to judge your internal experience for the duration of our meditation. We just accept it completely and get into the stance of that observer self as we breathe and keep the attention anchored on the breath. Now from this perspective, sitting in the chair, paying attention to the breath, feeling whatever you feel, we can notice the mind, the small m mind. And the mind is a thought-producing part of us, just like the heart is the blood-pumping part of us. It's fine that it produces thought. Thoughts are constantly being produced, living for a little bit, and then dissolving again. And we can sit in observation of that process while keeping the attention on the breath and just letting thoughts come and thoughts go without getting attached to them. We can just allow thinking to happen, but keeping that attention on the breath moment by moment. Now, if it hasn't happened many times already, it will, of course, at some point happen, where your attention is kind of swept away, it gets hooked. And without you even realizing it at first, you're away thinking. You're in thinking. So you've left the real world and you've gone to the conceptual world of thought. So that means you're in an image or an evaluation or a story or a to-do, something. When you realize that that's happened, that's when you've woken back up. That's amazing. So when you realize that that's happened, that you're no longer simply just paying attention to the breath, you just label whatever content it is thinking, and kindly but firmly you escort your attention back and place it on the anchor of breath and body until you're gone the next time. Then thinking, and come back. And you come back and you come back and you come back as many times as you need to. And every time you come back, it's as if you are lifting one repetition of a weight. You're strengthening that muscle. So we just keep doing that over and over and over again, as many times as you need to, feeling what you feel until you hear the gong to come out of the practice. We're going to go into some silence now, just for a little bit. So just take one nice deep breath in through your nose and out your mouth. Relax your body, relax your shoulders, relax your face, and letting your eyes softly open if they're closed. Okay, so I'd be really interested to hear how that was for you, that little short meditation, and now answer any questions you may have about meditation, how to do it, clear up anything. So please feel free to put some questions on the chat, and Milena can ask.
I mean, first of all, thank you so much. That was really a fantastic session. I really enjoyed it myself. So yeah, the meditation was very relaxing. It's very good. Thank you.
It can be, but sometimes it isn't. That's okay too, as long as you're working on that muscle of attention. I mean, at the moment, and since the lockdown, so for 5 weeks now, I run a free meditation session online every 48 hours. So I can give you details of that, Milena, if you want to pass that on. But that some of our meditations have felt really peaceful, but for others, it's been a real struggle. It depends what's going on in the context. You know, it's not a decontextualized experience. So yeah, but it can be deeply relaxing. It's very rejuvenating. The research is very clear. It does all sorts of wonderful things for us. Someone said before, for the body, for the mind, it's amazing because it gets you into that right relationship. Yeah. Has anybody got anything else to ask? I know that we are just a little bit over time, and I'm sorry for keeping you longer. I just, I like sharing this stuff. I've put up a QR code. This and the URL will take you to a set of resources that I've put online, videos, things that really support and back up what we've discussed today. So I hope you'll go visit those and make use of those. That'd be great. Yeah. So yeah, I'll leave that up there in case you want to take a photo. Okay, so it doesn't appear that there are any more questions that have come in, or is
No
anyone...
more questions. I think quite a lot of people are about to go and break their fast, so...
Of course, yes, so we will wrap up, but thank you.
Oh, wait, there's one question, one moment. Cherry would like to ask about meditation of the Yoga Nidra.
Okay, so Yoga Nidra is relaxation meditation that's often done in the evening. It's about really working with the central nervous system to calm you down. That is a calming. Yoga Nidra is a calming practice. It's a very deep meditative, it's a sleep-inducing practice, a peace-inducing practice. It's not Vipassana. This is Vipassana meditation that we did, technically speaking. It's insight-generating meditation because it gets the muscle of attention, i.e. your consciousness, more strong within you. You literally sit in the chair of your consciousness. Other words for that, soul, spirit, awareness. But Yoga Nidra is an ancient practice of really working with the nervous system. So yeah, it's like a treatment. Okay, this is a workout. It's a treatment. It's amazing, though. And there's some great teachers in Dubai for this. Yeah, I've got one more question. I saw it pop down.
Does music help during meditation? Usually I find sounds of the nature to be the best.
Yeah. So what, with the guided meditations and using music, it's kind of a form of scaffolding. So basically what you're doing is you're giving your mind, I think of it as like the small end mind, you're sort of throwing it a bone. You're giving it something to focus on. That is a little easier, okay? But if you want to really work that muscle, do at least some in complete silence, because that's when you really give your mind nothing and you see it. You see it do all its stuff. It's like no net meditation. So if you think about muscle building, doing it with a guide or doing it with music is just lighter, it's lighter weights, because you're giving your thinking mind something that it approves of. And guided meditation is much more, music a little bit less, certainly nature sounds a little bit less, but see, you're giving that mind something it approves of. I'm not saying it's bad, you know, I do that sometimes too, but make sure you're also just doing nothing, just the sound of the person vacuuming next door and things that your mind is going to get really, you know, upset about, so that you can practice withdrawing attention. Because when you get better with discomfort in your meditation and you get good at, you know, talk to the hand mind, you get very good off your cushion at that. It's not that you become avoidant, it's just that I catch where my attention is and I shift it because I've practiced in my meditation, if that makes sense. I mean, a lot of this teaching meditation, I've been doing it for 20 years, and this is it's just endless conversation to try to get all the concepts, because it goes beyond language. It's an experience. And so the more you meditate, the more you get it, because it's already in you to get. We're remembering it, we're not learning it. Yeah, great. Well, I'm aware that some people have to go and break their fast. So I just want to say thank you so much for being with me today and giving me this hour or so of your time. I hope that it's been really interesting and helpful for you. If I can be of any service to you, please reach out to me individually on email to answer any questions you may have, and take care, stay safe, and be well.
Thank you so much, really appreciate it. So I'll be sharing the contact details on email tomorrow, so please feel free to reach out. And thank you again for a fantastic session. It was very insightful and very, very useful. So thank you very much. Stay safe and have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Milena. Bye, everybody.
Bye.